Hi, my name is Daniel Berninger, and I wanted to post a video to endorse Rand Paul's Internet Independence Resolution. He submitted it in the Senate last Wednesday, got a great deal of grief about it, so let me just read it here real quick. Senator Rand Paul introduces a joint resolution of disapproval to repeal Internet regulation. Senator Paul today introduced a joint resolution of disapproval under the Congressional Review Act to nullify the Internet regulations recently published by the U.S. Federal Communication Commission. Through the resolution, Senator Paul will seek a vote in the U.S. Senate against the FCC's unnecessary and overreaching power grab for control of the Internet. Now, this matters to me, as it should matter to everyone. In particular, I filed a petition with the FCC to stay the Internet regulations, and the reason I think we need Senator Paul's help here is the filing I received from Public Knowledge Free Press and Open Technology Institute, written by Harold Feld. So Harold, let's maybe have this conversation via dueling videos. Let's see if we can explain our respective positions without all the footnotes. So again, the problem, and the reason we need Senator Paul's Internet Independence Resolution is because, fighting these things out in the legal realm and to the FCC is really only something lawyers can do. It's very difficult for entrepreneurs to do that, and again, so I'm sitting here in my house. I would just as soon be working on a new startup rather than arguing about my right to pursue a startup. And Harold, I think the confusion is in terms of who has a burden of proof. In America, the way our government works is that we have those, we can pursue those activities unless they're prohibited. So the presumption is that I'm allowed to do startups as I see fit. If something goes wrong and there's a market failure and the regulator needs to step in, then we find out what that is and we try to make that fix. But it's not, the burden of proof is not on me to say that the FCC can't arbitrarily decide against what I can do. And again, the dynamic is that we had an internet that was free of regulation since it was released on April 30th, 1995 from government control. And it's flourished, and we've seen a 1,000-fold expansion of communication capacity. And so my petition to stay the order simply said that. Everything has been working great. Why is it that the FCC feels like it needs to regulate the internet? In particular, I complained about a few things. One was that the way they took control over the internet, and that was saying that the telephone network and the internet were the same thing. In your petition here, you don't say anything about the strange way in which the FCC took control of the internet, which is simply just to change a definition, put within the definition all IP addresses, whether or not, with no limitation, and voila, anything with an IP address is within the authority of the FCC. And again, this is not something that normally in America we do. Yes, we understand in China they have top-down authority to regulate anything they want, but in America we generally have laws on a limited basis on things that clearly need to be addressed. And so that's essentially, my complaint, or the request for stay is there was a world we called information service that was non-regulated. Everything was great there. Not again, it's business, so there's back and forth, and there's a little rough and tumble, but nothing like that should generate a complete overhaul of the policy environment. And so, does the FCC, in my complaint, have the right to completely change the policy environment? So prior to the ruling. The FCC had regulatory authority over regulated voice, which is maybe $100 billion part of the economy. And just by changing the definition, they now regulate $1.2 trillion worth of the economy. And again, I think they should have to justify that, not me as a entrepreneur starting companies in the non-regulated world. So if we go here and look at some of the things that Harold says. So petitioner's arguments fail to justify the extraordinary action of updating. So okay, so my stay request is extraordinary, but the FCC's blanketing the internet with regulations is not extraordinary. And so I'm saying before the FCC does the extraordinary thing, it should have some evidence. And again, sort of back to what Senator Rand Paul was attempting with his internet independence resolution, that there ought to be an extraordinary reason to impose regulations on the internet. And again, so Harold, you are a lawyer and you live in the realm of the FCC. I've spent 20 years trying to avoid having to explain myself to the FCC and just do startups and just explain myself to customers and end users. Petitioner has neither sought judicial review nor a petition for reconsideration with the Commission. So you're saying that I cannot ask the FCC to stop regulating the internet unless I appeal in the courts. Again, so that's not how things work in America, that I have a presumption of my activities are legal unless there's some specific reason as to why I'm injuring someone else, or there's some reason that we need to intervene. So the presumption is not I have to go run off an appeal just to get something that should be a basic right. The requirement is for the FCC to do that. Petitioner faces difficulty in the reclassification of broadband internet access service does not directly affect the petitioner. So so here is a problem where sort of with industrial policy that I object to in general, is that the bureaucrats do not have the information in their corner office somewhere to have a clue as to where to tinker with the market to know how to fix something. And in particular, this idea that the order is just regulating the broadband internet access providers. No, in fact, it's a single market. Everybody interacts with everybody. So if you constrain or attempt to constrain the business models on one player, you're now constraining the business models on everybody. And the confusion there is there used to be two networks. There was a telephone network and a internet. But telephone network, as regulated by Title II, died. We can just go look back at the history of Title II regulation of the telephone network, and nobody wants to use it anymore. And the internet completely took over that world, the non-regulated internet. So in the old world, yeah, you had two networks and you could have two different policies, but in the new world, it's all one network. So if you mess with one player, you're messing with all the players. Petitioner fails to point to any argument that is likely to succeed in challenging the Commission. No? Well, again, we have a separation of powers between what Congress is allowed to do and what a regulator is allowed to do. And in this case, a regulator made a wholesale transformation of the policy environment by just tweaking a definition of what is a telephone network. Again, so okay, a telephone network is this on day one. Okay, now the telephone network includes the internet. You've just expanded your jurisdiction over the entire economy. That seems like a policy that the Congress might want to know about. And in fact, Congress, in the Telecom Act, specifically said that the internet should not be regulated. So that should be enough to at least weigh concern and consideration. And this just goes on and on, lots and lots of footnotes. Let's see, for one, thing, basic phone services, both wireline, wireless, as well as enterprise. So one of the arguments I make in my petition is that there's no examples of startups that actually succeed under Title II. So as a person doing startups, I would be concerned that I would be in a realm that was within reach of Title II. And I say there's nobody that funds things in the realm of Title II. So you don't argue that. Well, you're sort of one example of a successful activity within Title II is rural and wireless basic telephone service. Really? Is that it? So as far as I know, rural and basic telephone service is really struggling. And as far as I know, all the people that are in that business are really struggling. When I think of any new communication service, anyone does, whether, again, the big ones, the big brands, Twitter, Facebook, etc., or any random service, these are all information services. There are no new communication services in the Title II realm. So again, my assertion is that here I am in my house. I am a human being. I should be allowed to pursue new communication services without asking permission from the FCC. I shouldn't have to appeal anything, and that's the definition of permissionless, innovation that we have had, again, up to this point in the realm of the internet. And the reason I have gone to the trouble of appealing this is because I think this really is important, and I can't help but see the comparisons to the American colonists as they were, trying to pursue their new livelihood after taking the risk of an ocean voyage. They're trying to set up their farms, doing the best they can, and sort of their basic survival is questionable, just like my basic survival as an entrepreneur is questionable. But if you put that on top, these demands by a distant monarch, then there's some pushback, and so I'm just starting that here. Harold, please, please send me your video as to why you think I, as an entrepreneur, should need to go to the FCC and ask permission for everything that I do.